Sonic the Hedgehog, the most nostalgic franchise in my library. Over the years, I have played a lot of games in this franchise, not all of which have been all that great. And being my first countdown, I thought I would talk about my 10 favorite games in the series. Now, please keep in mind that I have not played every single Sonic game out there, so if your favorite Sonic game isn't on here, please don't whine in the comments, because it's most likely that I didn't get to play it. So instead, feel free to make your own list if you want. Now, there aren't exactly any rules as to why I like a game, but before we get started, let me just say, I prefer Sonic in 3D. Hey, shut up! Anyway, let's get started. Sonic 4 Episode 2. What a game. As you may know, this game was planned to improve all the problems that Episode 1 had. And I must say they've done a pretty good job at it. The only thing that they didn't improve, at least from what I can recall, is the length. One thing you might notice right away is the newly added tail system, which is very improved from the Genesis games. This is used to help Sonic fly, swim, and, well, whatever that is. At least he does more than he does in Sonic 2. And as for the bosses, well, in my opinion, they just feel better than Episode 1 and the Genesis games. And it's also nice to see Metal Sonic return. While the fights with them aren't as good or as challenging as the Eggman fights, they're still pretty good. But if you purchase Episode 1, you get Episode Metal absolutely free, so that's pretty cool. Whether or not you liked Episode 1, I still think you should at least try out Episode 2. I think you'll like it better. Now this wouldn't be a best Sonic games list without the original. At the time, this game was unlike anything we've ever seen before. This game has a fast sense of speed, colorful level design and graphics, followed by some of the greatest music ever to come out of this franchise. This game definitely gave Mario a run for its money and did what Nintendo don't. But you're probably wondering, why isn't this game any higher?
It's a conspiracy, I tell you! A conspiracy! I'm not asking you.
Actually, the reason is because, unlike most people, I never grew up with this game. You want to know the other reason why it's not any higher? Well, it's because of that atrocious remake, which pretty much ruined everything that made the original good. But, like most people, I still love this game for what it is. As you may know, Sonic handhelds back then were just really not that great. But nowadays, most of them are awesome. Sonic Rush Adventure is the first one you will see. Like many people, I consider the Sonic Rush games to be some of the fastest Sonic games out there. But you're probably wondering why the sequel's on here, not the first game. Well, I've never played the first one. But I can tell this game is definitely different from the first one. The first thing that's different from the first game is the usage of vehicles. A lot of people didn't like this feature, but I thought it was pretty nice. Personally, I thought this added depth to the game, and when a game adds depth to it, then that's something I enjoy. Another advantage from the first game were the boss fights, because I personally thought that these were fun to fight. My personal favorites being the Ghost Rex, and Captain Whisker and Johnny. I also liked how the story tried to go for the more adventure feel. In my opinion, they did this pretty dang well. This game was a different adventure, but boy was it fun. Yes, I know, bad puns are bad. Alright, my flame shield is up and ready. What? How can you put Sonic and the Black Knight on this list?
Oh!
And in front of the Amazing Sonic 1!
No! I got God mode!
Oh, and it's in front of Sonic CD as well. It's just my list, so grow up. I mean, so what if the game was too short, too easy? And so what if the game had a lack of strategy?
Just about every other aspect of this game was good, at least in my opinion.
Many of you may know that this was the sequel to the disaster game known as Secret Rings. At first I didn't think this game would be all that great either, but I eventually enjoyed this game. The mechanics and controls were a million times better than Secret Rings could have ever hoped to have been. And I also like the story. I just think it has a more dark and in-depth perception than Secret Rings. But by far one of the best aspects are the graphics and visuals. I just love how well detailed and sometimes realistic they are. Plus, this is home to by far my favorite soundtrack in the entire franchise, with songs like Dragon's Lair and the final boss tune, With Me. So you fanboys can hate me all you want. I like this game. Deal with it. Alright, let's face it, who didn't think this would be on the list? Many people call this their favorite of the 3 Genesis games, and there's absolutely no denying that. Similar to Sonic 4 Episode 2, this pretty much improved everything that made the original good. The sense of speed is much better than in the first one. Not only that, but they even added new additions. One of the new additions they made was add a 7th Chaos Emerald for the Supersonic ability. And they also added Tails, who's one of the best sidekicks in gaming history, period. I mean, this is one of the best video game sequels ever made. I don't think much more needs to be said. If you must know, Sonic Advance 3 is my favorite handheld Sonic game. I mean, why not? The Sonic Advance games are already fantastic. And as you can already tell, this is my personal favorite of the 3. The reasons being the level design and partner system. I especially love the new partner system, as it gave people different moves depending on which 2 characters you use. It also gave you certain tag actions that you couldn't do by yourself. This gave a purpose to using all 5 different characters in different combinations. As for the level design, a lot of people say the first game has the best, but in my opinion they're totally wrong. I actually have to give that reward to this game. I have no idea why people would say the first game has the best level design. I mean, the designs here are just flat out creative. You have an unfinished construction building in the middle of a futuristic city, an underwater secret base, a royal palace made of freaking toys, and my personal favorite, a zero-gravity science lab. A zero-gravity science lab! There's only one word I can use to describe that. And despite how great this game is, not everyone has played it. In fact, very few have. So it's slightly underrated. But I still highly recommend you at least check it out. Especially if you have a Game Boy Advance. Well, on the subject of underrated Sonic games, many people in the Countdown community consider Sonic Unleashed to be one of the best and most underrated in the entire Sonic franchise. Nowadays this game were a positive review, but it's still a little underrated. The daytime stages were just absolutely fantastic. Seriously, there isn't a single daytime stage in the entire game that isn't fast. In fact, this is some of the fastest Sonic has ever been. And they've even added a new gimmick to this game. This new gimmick is called the Hedgehog, which is why this game gets a lot of hate. Instead of being fast, you're fairly slow, and you just pummel everything in sight. Personally, I actually like the Hedgehog stages, because instead of just fighting down enemies, you have to fight down enemies and do other stuff like pulling levers and opening gates. Plus, taking down monsters that are twice my size is just so satisfying. The reason the Hedgehog gets a lot of hate is because it's slow, and nobody liked that. Well, I'll let you on a little secret. It's supposed to be slow. That's like saying you expect Bowser to move at the speed of light. But I'm not going to waste your time trying to insult the fanboys. I'm actually going to try to go into more on why I like this game. Another thing about the levels is how realistic the locations are. I'm not even kidding. Every single location is based on a real place in the world. Except for Eggman Land. Wait. Eggman Land?
You mean the Eggman Land? You know, the entire goal he was trying to do in the first Sonic adventure? He succeeded at this, and no one, not even the Doctor himself, cares about this even the slightest bit? Maybe it doesn't matter to him anymore. But the rest of the levels are based on real-life locations in the world. For example, Chunnan is China, Empire City looks like to be New York City, and Holaska looks to be Iceland, and this is just a few of the levels. This is one of the only Sonic games out there that isn't a short game. Don't listen to the ignorance known as IGN. This game is awesome. In fact, I'm willing to say right now that this deserves to take the title from Sonic Heroes for being the most mixed bag in the entire franchise. But be aware that I specifically mean the PS3 and 360 versions, not the Wii or PS2 versions. Remember earlier when I said Sonic 2 was my favorite of the Sega Genesis games? Well, I lied. While Sonic 2 revolutionized most of what the modern Sonic games have today, I still can't find a reason to put it in front of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Oh, the nostalgia running through my veins! Not only is this my favorite of the Genesis games, but this is also my favorite 2D Sonic game of all time. The reason is because this was the very first Sonic game I've ever played. And not only that, but the first video game I've ever played. A lot of people will tell you that Sonic 2 is better than this, and I honestly don't see why. I just found this game to be more challenging than Sonic 2. I can pretty much explain that in 3 words. Launch, base, zone. Seriously, this is one of the most frustrating levels I've ever played in any video game. Heck, even after beating this already, I can still have trouble beating it today. This level has so many enemies, so many gimmicks, and overall it's just so much in your way. But other than the terror known as Launch Base Zone, the difficulty is pretty balanced. Plus, in my opinion, Sonic 3 has better graphics than that of Sonic 2. Most notably, in my opinion, Sonic Sprite. A lot of people prefer Sonic 2's sprite over Sonic 3's, but in my opinion, Sonic 3 is the better sprite because Sonic is showing more than just one expression. Plus, there's also the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge. This allows you to play as Knuckles in Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 without using a hacking device. But wait! Aren't you putting 2 games on the list? Actually, no, because both of these games were intended to be a single game. You wanna know something I don't like about this game? The freaking bonus stages! Gosh, they're annoying. You know who else has problems with these? Well, at least they're worth attempting to get the Super Emeralds, which give you Super Hyper Seizure Legendary, Sonic, I guess. I can pretty much recommend this to any Sonic fan, especially if you like the Genesis games. And if you don't have a Sega Genesis, then it's on the Sega Mega Collection for the GameCube, and it's also on WiiWare Virtual Console. You need to get this game! Many people call Sonic Adventure 2 to be the best 3D Sonic game, or the best Sonic game, or the best game of all time. While I disagree with this, it is pretty easy to see why. It does everything a good sequel should do. It puts in everything that made the first game good, adds new things, and improves the problems. Even if they downgraded a few things. But in my opinion, the game had better levels. The game had a better replay value. The Chow Garden had more depth. And it features awesome new characters. Plus the boss fights were a lot of fun. Well, not all of them, that is. But the story is one of the greatest in gaming history. The reason is because instead of being the usual happy-go-lucky Sonic story we always get, the story will actually go to a darker feel to it, which is something unique about the story. And the music is also some of the best in the entire franchise. With songs like Radical Highway, Live and Learn, and my personal favorite, Pyramid Cave. Really, not a lot needs to be said about this game, except for one thing. This game can give other Fantastic 3 platformers such as Banjo-Kazooie, Donkey Kong 64, and the entire Mario franchise a run for its money. Yes, this game is just that good, but we have one spot left. face it, if you've been with my channel since the beginning, you knew this would be number 1. In all honesty, to me, there was no other game that could take the number 1 spot. No other game than Sonic Colors. But anyway, you're probably asking, why is this your favorite Sonic game? Well, I'll tell you. Well, one reason is that this is one of the most surprising games in Sonic's history. When this game was first announced, people thought it would just be another bad Sonic game with terrible gimmicks, bad controls, annoying characters, and overall a bad game. But they were literally 100% wrong. Even the water level is actually good. Plus the only characters in the game are Sonic, Tails, and Eggman. And only Sonic himself is playable, so that means no more searching for emeralds, no more team aspect, and no more Hedgehog. Just simple run-in platform, featuring awesome new Wisp power-ups. Each of these Wisp power-ups helps Sonic to get through areas he couldn't on his own. I'm not even kidding, every single Wisp in the game is fun to use. Believe me when I say that there isn't a single Wisp out there that I don't like. Plus the game has huge replayability with all the red rings. These rings allow you to access the Sonic simulators, and if you beat all the Sonic simulators, guess what you get? Another step up from previous Sonic games is the humor. The plot itself is already pretty good, but does have its fair share of problems. But the humor kinda makes up for that, because it's actually very funny. The humor takes itself to different spaces to keep it from getting stale. Whether it be trying to find the new voice chip of Eggman's robot minion, or Tails' unfinished translator giving all sorts of crazy messages, or Sonic making all sorts of smart comics with this fantastic new voice actor, might I add, the humor is very well done. So for all of these reasons, Sonic Colors is by far my favorite Sonic game. But I'm not that predictable now, am I? The number 1 spot actually goes to 2 games. Believe me when I say that it was torture to choose which one goes to the number 1 spot. But I eventually settled on just both games making the number 1 spot, because these games are just both so similar.
Get over there!
Okay, fine. Just play the clip. Thank you, Sonic Team, for making this game. Many of you may know that this was the game that saved Sonic. Almost as if they got most of the fanboys to just shut up. Probably because they had a classic Sonic. But anyway, onto the gameplay. This game features the previously mentioned classic Sonic, as well as, you guessed it, modern Sonic. While I prefer the modern stages, I still enjoy the classic stages. The controls are awesome. Classic Sonic controls perfectly. And even modern Sonic controls very well. Plus the boss fights are very awesome. You'll hear my full opinions about each of them in a later video, but I will say that they were fun to fight. As for the music, it's awesome. We get some awesome classic remixes, as well as some amazing modern remixes. With my favorite modern remix being Chemical Plant, and my favorite classic remix being Crisis City, and you're listening to that right now. Plus there are tons of challenge X for replayability. Sonic Colors and Generations are definitely the perfect Sonic games. I'm a Super Dementio, and Sonic Generations and Sonic Colors are my favorite Sonic games ever.